And you must find a middle ground here because you're quite right. There's no evidence in the Hermetica, zero, nothing. In Jammerlichus you have a few references. At one point, twice he mentions some concoction, something, we do not know what it is. And I do interpret Jammerlichus as a practitioner of the Hermetica. So that's puzzling, it's interesting, but we simply don't know more. QV instance, yes. There are some other things I talk about this, but the evidence is very hard to interpret and it's very minimal. So I very much agree with you. We should not project these things on the materials if we don't have evidence. At the same time, you're also right. There is this kind of anti-energetic kind of bias in scholarship, which doesn't want to see it at all. And I try to push back against that a little bit in my book. On the other hand, there's also, you mentioned Brian Morarescu and other people, there's also an other kind of bias which wants to see it everywhere. And Brian is, I think, an example of that. It's an interesting book, but it's full of rhetoric, but the actual evidence is very, very slight. There's one piece of evidence that's very, very interesting that he has discovered for the Eleusinian mysteries in Spain. That is, I think, fascinating. For the rest, I'm not so convinced. So I think we have to find a balance between this tendency of wanting to see entheogens everywhere and wanting to see them nowhere. I think we have to see them where we have evidence, or where we have good reason to assume that this is a credible hypothesis.
Right. I tend to call this a spectrum because I get comments that, every episode I do, it was DMT. And I call this, on the one hand, I call it psychedelic eliminativism, where we want to eliminate all psychotropic drugs from history. But the other is what I call DMT reductionism. It was always just DMT. And so psychedelic eliminativism, yeah, but also DMT reductivism, it's going to be more complicated than that.